Diamondlot, The Diamond Squad. By Eric Waugh. Chapter 23. Awaken. Bella regained consciousness as Leeloo was licking her face. She opened her eyes to see Nathan, Gia, and Zaid. She first asked Nathan and Zaid who the girl in the pointy hat was. Gia was about to give her introduction, but Nathan quickly covered her mouth and Zaid politely explained that Gia was their ally. With some of their strength regained, they made their way to check on the Grek's injuries, but the ground suddenly began to shake. Bella immediately looked at Nathan, hoping it was just his stomach growling, but Nathan nervously shook his head. Behind was a portal that had reappeared, and a giant snake-like creature within had its eyes open. The warlock that Gia pushed became the last sacrifice, and now the Leviathan was breaking free. Finding itself in such a confined space, the only interest the Leviathan had was to escape the caverns. Nathan and Bella immediately drew their weapons against the beast. Bella drove her spear towards the enemy, but her attack had no effect. Nathan followed up by attempting to cut through its tough skin, but his sword didn't even leave a scratch. Zaid was still extremely weak, and there was not much he could do. He turned to Gia hoping for some answers, as she had defeated this colossal beast before. However, Gia struggled to find a solution, as she had no recollection of how she defeated the monster years ago. Meanwhile, Bella and Nathan continued their struggle against the Leviathan that refused to give them its attention. Nathan was so focused on attacking the creature that he didn't notice the collapsing rocks falling upon him. Thankfully, Bella pushed him aside from the rock slide. As Nathan was thanking Bella, she figured out an idea to stop the Leviathan. She rushed over to Zaid and Gia to relay her plan. After tunneling through the area, the Leviathan had found the opening that led to the outside world. It was beginning to make its way towards freedom when Gia obstructed its path. The Leviathan let out a fierce roar, but Gia was undeterred by it. When the colossal snake charged at the witch, Nathan and Bella began striking the walls of the caverns, and rocks collapsed on their enemy. The Leviathan was trying to move out of the way, but Gia hurled rocks at it with her magic to keep its movement restrained. Unfortunately, the monster began to lash out with its tail, knocking all three of the warriors aside. The Leviathan was about to escape, but it took an unexpected fireball to the back of its head. Looking back, it saw the tiny dragon that refused to let it leave. Leeloo flew straight towards her gigantic foe. It stood still waiting to receive her attack, but before Leeloo made contact, Gia casted a spell that made Leeloo grow until she was the size of an adult dragon. Not only was Leeloo larger, but her strength was amplified. It was with this new power that allowed Leeloo to tackle the Leviathan and hold the colossal beast down. With the beast occupied, Bella had Zaid's arm over her shoulder, and they moved towards the exit. Behind them was Nathan, holding one of the injured Greks in his arms with the other three following him. It looked like the plan was going to work, but the Leviathan let out an outburst of power that pushed Leeloo back against the wall. Then it swung its tail chaotically, and the impact sent everyone falling onto the ground. Zaid managed to get up despite his injuries, but as he looked around he saw Nathan and Bella, who were completely exhausted. The Greks were unconscious and Gia was barely standing. All looked grim and hopeless, but something within Zaid was stirring and the pain in his leg was disappearing. The knight approached Gia asking if she had enough energy for one last spell. The witch replied with enthusiasm, and Zaid told her to wait for the signal. He explained that he was going to save everyone. Without his steed, his speed had somehow increased and he was now beside Leeloo. He made sure she was all right before asking her if she could hold out for a couple more minutes. Leeloo nodded her head and jumped back on her feet, ready to engage the Leviathan one last time. Again, the Leviathan and Leeloo were locked against one another. With the distraction she created, Zaid rushed over to carry the Greks out one by one. He managed to save three before seeing Leeloo tossed aside. Despite the situation, Zaid was determined to not leave the last Grek behind. He continued to run with fervor, but the Leviathan had its sight set on the speedy knight. As Leeloo tried to get up, she felt the hand of Bella, who wanted to speak with her. She happily allowed Bella to hop on her back. Together they charged at the Leviathan that was too focused on Zaid. With her lance out, they smashed into the beast and Bella caught it right in the eye. This allowed Zaid to grab the last Grek and dash towards the exit. Once he was there, he gave Gia the signal. In response, she used all her energy to blast the ceiling of the entrance so they could cave the Leviathan in. Leeloo began flying Bella out, but when she got about halfway, her body shrunk back to her original size. Now she couldn't carry Bella, who had no strength left to run, and the Leviathan was trying to catch them. Nathan and Gia looked helplessly at the situation as they were both completely out of gas. There was nothing left they could do, but Zaid refused to give in. His body suddenly began to heat up and glow, awakening a power that had been lying dormant. He took one step, but his speed had increased so much he dashed to Bella and Leeloo in seconds. With each of them in his arms, he dashed back out of the caverns as the Leviathan missed his chance to attack. Zaid had rescued everyone from the den as the ceiling collapsed, blocking off the exit and trapping the Leviathan. Everyone looked at Zaid, who had a mark showing on his right arm where his armor had broken off. He was one of the 4 warriors that possessed the mark.